Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Songs and Sorcery. It is I, your host, Leonic, and I'm here with my audacious. Is that even a word? I have no idea. I'm with my brilliant co-host, Grimmy. Say hello, Grimmy. Yes, Grimmy. I know we had something to talk about. Yes, so I apologize first and foremost for not having this be a recorded video. Despite the fact that I would have liked to record in my dungeon for the time being, there are people looking for me right now, so I can't do that exactly live at the moment. Because I believe, depending on how this conversation goes, I might be a bit loud and a bit, expressive. So, the subject of today's video, and I did sort of want to lead into that, but let's just have this first thing and then I will go back into it later. The subject is called bridges. Bridges are these long structures that are created in order to essentially bridge one landmass to another landmass. And I believe I do recall having a video like this that I did, I think maybe a year ago, or maybe several months. It is somewhat of an old video, for I cannot remember it, but I believe I did address it to some extent. The reason why I want to sort of go into this video is mostly due to the overall, I think the overall reactions and things that occurred on November 5th after the elections, by the way, they were still counting things well after the projected results of the elections. That's why you have to sort of wait entirely before everything gets announced. But for the most part, yes, we are well aware of who is the president of the United States of America. And I know most of the community, most people that, I have, friends or relations with, had a bit of a concern. But it is mostly because, aside from, his demeanor, Donald Trump, for example, aside from his, record or everything else, it is essentially who he has sort of tied himself with that is, I believe, the problem. Now, there's a lot of things we can sort of learn about this and go into it. And I normally try to leave this sort of, political things out of the conversations. There are those of us that share the opinion that witchcraft is inherently political. And though I do agree, magic is not entirely. That was sort of where I sort of draw the line when it comes to that sort of understanding. However, when it came to the elections, I saw that so many people had these very strong reactions, and I can understand that completely. There were many people that, shed tears, many people that were very angry, and they were sort of, drawing a line in the sand as to where they sort of, I guess, have their relationships or their, friendships in order. And on that day, we can probably say that there were many bridges that were burned based on the results of the election. Now, for those of you who I believe might have some apprehension as to what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about that subject in regards to the elections. I, of course, did not vote for Donald Trump. Again, Kamala was not the strongest candidate, unfortunately. She did do very well compared to how she started very late into the race, and she was able to garner lots of support. And there are certain things about her that people do not like. She's not a very strong public speaker, but I believe she actually has some plans aside from concepts of plans when we compare her to Donald Trump. However, that being said, Donald Trump is very good at public speaking. He's very good at galvanizing his audience. And despite the overall amount of people that are in this psychosis, thinking that he's absolutely the brilliant and most best character and candidate, I think is a bit of a, I don't want to say misnomer, but I think it's incredibly misplaced. For people that, for the most part, say that they try to be as equal in both opinions, they really weren't. The amount of people that were completely objective about the elections were incredibly small, or at least were the people that had the smallest voices in this. When it came to the progressive issues in the elections, one of which was abortion, as well as a whole bunch of other things as well. And then there was a counter to that. And the counter to that was, problems like immigration, which there are, but not to the extent that people believe there are. Subject as well as the economy, which can be bad. And even though factually we are doing better in comparison to a lot of countries and in comparison to the growth, people are still having trouble sort of, paying for groceries and things like that. Now, the fact that they blame this all on the president, regardless of who is elected, is, I believe, a little bit ridiculous. But when people don't know the intricacies of government, anything and everything that goes wrong or right, they chalk it up to the head person in charge. Despite the fact that there are business leaders of various corporations and industries that are in charge of these sort of things. You have people that are in charge of the FDA, the WHO. You have people that are in charge of so many different, organizations within the United States that they should be the ones held, responsible for certain things. And unfortunately, the president, even though Joe Biden, I believe, did rather well his first term, the second term, I don't think he should be, doing whatever. And before people want to jump on the whole thing about Joe didn't do this, he absolutely did. When it came to the infrastructure bill and when it came to the, as far as the gun regulations or safety, they are actually working on that. And he's made some leaps and bounds in certain other things that perhaps, Trump did not. However, Trump did do some things before that did help the economy, even though he was overspending, which essentially got us into the deficit to begin with. It's a lot of problems that neither side can really agree upon. I don't like the man for many reasons, but Kamala definitely was not a strongest choice. She absolutely was not. She was better than Joe by a few margins, but so many other people could have been better choices for that. Honestly, I think Gavin Newsom probably would have been the strongest candidate, or Pete Buttigieg, to be honest. He would have been a lot better than Kamala, but it is what it is. So there's a whole things into that. There's a whole politics, a whole minutia when it comes to that sort of thing. And so even though I could go into the details of what each candidate was going to bring, that is not the focus of this video. I'm going to focus on the bridges that were either kept or burned during this administration and how we need to be careful when it comes to working our gifts or magics with people of perhaps different lands that are connected by these bridges, and how the bridges that we form in life can translate into our spiritual lives as well. Now, when it came to this sort of election, after the thing happened, I understand lots of people were upset, and it's very understandable. And I agree the abortion thing is a huge issue. And though Donald Trump did not explicitly ban abortion across the board, he did help in the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And there are some pros and cons. Well, not really. There's no real pros to that. There's mostly cons. The reason why I say they're mostly cons is because people have this idea that by somebody making abortion legal means that they are telling everyone to get abortions. That's not what it is. They are giving you the option to have one safely and legally, as opposed to not. The only reason or the issue that occurs by leaving it up to the states is because there are many states, aside from them being ideologically driven, that can benefit by not allowing abortion to be legalized. And unfortunately, if you're a person of a particular inclination, or if you're a person of a minor age, and you are not old enough to leave the house to move states, and something happens to you, or you're in a marriage of which is legally binding, and for a myriad of reasons you aren't allowed to leave for whatever reasons, each state is different, you could perhaps be screwed over in that account. The reason why abortion was such a huge issue is because it allowed people to have the choice to lead their own lives. I have my own ideals as to, the children and everything else, souls and spirits. I have my own beliefs in regards to that, which mostly involves the body itself is just a vessel for the spirit to go in. So even if someone is aborted or they die or whatever, that person that you are thinking of still exists in the other plane. They just haven't manifested yet. But when it comes to the abortion ban, for example, there are many states that are going to absolutely across the board ban it. And it's going to lead to a lot of dangerous situations. For example, if a woman perhaps is, raped either by her father, her brother, or her husband, and she's not allowed to have an abortion, she can't leave the state, she would then be forced to have that child. Or perhaps, die in childbirth, or perhaps do things that would essentially end the life of the child, which could in fact end the life of the mother as well. The other issue that comes along with that is because if a child is born from a mother who is unwilling to have it, it can breed a lot of animosity and hostility towards that child. And so the child can grow up in a very dangerous environment. Because even though the child is born, the mother can come up with machinations, or perhaps if the father doesn't want to have the child, but they weren't allowed to have an abortion, they will probably try to find ways to either game the system for the most benefit part of it, or they will find some way to get rid of the child, if not pawn it off. They will leave it out somewhere, they will purposely lose it, they will drive their car into the lakes, into the rivers to drown the children while they escape and pawn it off as an accident. So if you ban abortion, kids and children will absolutely perhaps die, or, face perhaps some worse things by comparison. And these are things that people don't really think about. But that's just one aspect when it came to the whole debate about the elections. And there are some people that were issue voters, whether it was about the economy, whether it was about everything else. And there are sort of moral apprehensions when it comes to the sort of thing, putting a price on a person's freedom. People have pretty much done that in order for them to be a bit comfortable, but there are legitimate complaints when it comes to things like the economy and through things like immigration, for example. And most of the things that people think about like immigration, and I know I said I wasn't going to go into this, but it is something that absolutely bothers me. The total amount of people that complain about immigration don't know the processes. They just say illegal immigration across the board, but they do not consider the immigrants that are here legally through the asylum bill and through work visas or of the like. These are absolutely, legal documentations that allow persons to be legal, and they are here legally, working legally, making money legally. And so there's a lot of information about these sort of things. The whole fiasco about the whole things about the Haitians in Ohio, for example, which was absolutely false. I mean, Governor Mike DeWine is an actual Republican. He looked into the matter and found nothing solidified by this. It's funny how no one actually brings any proof about these sort of things. They just sort of go with the flow, go with, well, trust me, bro. He said, she said shit. People that are working have no need to actually eat dogs or cats because they can afford to buy the food. Most of them were here for work, and they actually interview the people that have these factories, these plants that are hiring Haitian workers. And the reason why, there's many reasons for this, is because the people at home don't want to work those jobs because they may or may not be good for them physically. They perhaps don't want to work the jobs at all because they find it beneath them, or it's not something they simply like to do. Or three, because they perhaps don't meet the requirements for the job. On one hand, it is good to hire outside of the US because it is cheaper to hire labor from foreign countries. And it is also a sort of step that people go to if they can't find work here. They have to outsource those jobs because the people that can be used for those jobs don't want to apply, can't apply, or won't apply. So there's a lot of problems when it comes to that sort of thing. And there's a lot of immigrants that are pouring into the economy as well. They buy the food, and they essentially pay into the Social Security that the residents and citizens benefit from. Illegals can't get Social Security. They can't get, all the benefits that comes with being a citizen. They're essentially being used for their labor, being paid cheap wages, but they are helping building into the U.S. economy. So there's absolutely pros and cons when it comes to immigration. But that is a separate subject, I believe, for a separate video that I may or may not want to have at some point down the line. And I'm sorry I went into those tangents, but those are things that I believe people need to consider when it comes to this and look into the minutia. And when it came to the whole cats and dogs things, to go back to that, there's really no basis for it. Even the woman that mentioned it said that she sort of exaggerated a bit, and she apologized for it. And when it came to the person that they caught on camera, she was actually a U.S. resident, a black woman who wasn't even Haitian. She was under the influence of some strong drugs. And so she was eating a cat on the street, which, crazy people in LA do as well, but they're citizens. Homeless, of course, but citizens. But like I said, I digress. It goes back to, let's just get off the subject for a moment. So bridges. There are those of us who reacted very strongly to the results of the election, and I can understand why. However, I think it was perhaps a bit rash, and I can understand the idea and the sentiment. I, for example, am perhaps one of the few members of my entire family that voted for Kamala and not for Trump. Now, my family, for the most part, are the religious sort. They're also extremely conservative. There are problems and ideals and beliefs that I have that counter theirs. And so on many aspects, I can't get along with them at all. Honestly, I had virtually no contact or conversation with my family for several days just because I was not just processing it, but I didn't want to go through the bullshit that could arise from having a conflict of interest or an interaction through conversation with these people, because they are very sort of one dimensional when it comes to the everything about this. And but I'll get into the other part I was going to bring up. And I think when you are essentially living in a situation where you are dependent upon people that voted different from yours in that election, you have to think very carefully and you have to be very smart. Our pride can be a dangerous weapon. It can be used for our good or for our ill. Those of us who are practitioners, those of us who are about magic, that feel very strongly about the rights of women, which I do as well. I'm very progressive in very accounts. However, we must be very cautious when it comes to this sort of things. And we have to learn how to use and exercise our power and when to sort of withdraw that sort of thing. We can't lead by emotions alone. And so I was reading all of these things on the public sites and everything else, and I have family members who said, just because we have a difference of opinion about the elections doesn't mean we can't be friends. And in one hand, I understand, but on the other, I think it's important to understand that, well, you understand that the person you are voting for is absolutely limiting and essentially taking away rights of people you do not agree with, that could be affected heavily by this. If you are a hetero cis person, cis means you are a person that identifies or that aligns with the gender of their birth. If you are born male, you grow up male, you feel male, you're fine. Same thing if you're a woman. However, if you're of a different sort, even though the Constitution or the Bill of Rights allows us to have the freedom of expression and liberties, they sort of want to limit that because they don't necessarily agree with the person's expression of those same rights. And when it comes to things like, aside from the trans and everything else, it took a very long time for the rights of marriages to be approved, to be sort of separated. Because we have this thing called the separation of church and state within the Constitution, within our law books, but people seem to want a theocracy. And people that are of the religious inclination were fine on one hand with Trump being in office because all of their leaders essentially are within the conservative department. They're in the Conservative Party. And that Conservative Party has a lot of sway within the elections. They have the Electoral College. They have a very large portion within the Senate and within the courts as well. And these are people that have businesses and corporations and industries that are benefiting from this. And of course, even they have their own agendas and their own ideologies that they are pushing through. Like the whole Quiverful movement, which was done by this radical religious leader. They were essentially breeding essentially religious fanatics and having them go to school, providing for them to go to school so that they can achieve these higher positions within government to essentially enact out the rules and laws of their belief system, which goes counter to the Constitution we have. I believe it goes counter to I believe it's the First Amendment. If the editor here knows the First Amendment, they can post it up on the screen. I would greatly appreciate it. So, but the reason why I go back into the whole bridge situation is because when we are leading ourselves, like let's say, for example, the person that you are renting your apartment out to is not affiliated with your political party, and you behave very rationally, you decide to leave based on emotion, you can fuck yourself over. If the people that can that are close to you and that you find you can rely on every now and then motives like this, and you decide to cut off, you're essentially cutting off an avenue of potential aid or wealth or anything like that. And some people can be fine with that, but I suggest you do those certain things when you are essentially comfortable and you're healthy enough to do so. If you are self-sufficient and you don't have any sort of need for those people in your life, by all means cut them out. However, I urge caution, because the people that live in these days are also spirits. And the spirits of the beyond could also have belief systems that we also do not agree with, but they are spirits of great power, and they can help you provided you align or do things for them that you may not agree with, but they agree with. Not every spirit has to like what you like, and not has to be very accommodating. There are perhaps spirits that prefer certain sacrifices, for example, or that they like when you do certain things that other spirits may not like. But it is what you get from them that you're looking for. The same thing when you work with the gods, you give them things that you're not too against in giving them so that they can give you something. And these gods, if you want to work with them, you have to be on their same wavelength to a certain degree. You have to vibe with that god, and you have to essentially give them things that they approve of for them then to give to you. And even when it comes to exchanging with spirits or gods, I also urge caution and to be careful of what you wish for, and to have some foresight when it comes to casting spells or doing things for a good cause. Several months back, when we were having the fiascos and the issues when it came to the whole genocide happening in Palestine, there were a lot of us that were praying for peace for Palestine, doing spells for peace for Palestine, creating sigils, putting sigils, communing with spirits of various kinds to allow peace within the region. Now, we have to be careful as to what you are doing and how and why you're doing it. Some people just say peace at any cost, or peace for a certain time, or peace for this sort of thing. That's why specifics are important when it comes to spellcraft. Though some people may argue against this, but there's a reason why. For the longest time, for these past 4 years, us being with the, democratic leaders of this country, which I believe are weak democratic leaders in certain aspects. For example, I have nothing against Joe, but, let's be real. He hasn't really done much to stem this wave of genocide against the Middle East. Okay? On the other hand, you have a candidate that claims, by the way, that he's going to end this war in the Middle East. And that is the hope for some people. Now, by you, for example, doing a spell to promote peace within the Middle East, at any cost perhaps, or by whatever you did, perhaps the gods or the spirits of justice or whatever saw that perhaps the only way for that to occur was to essentially change the regime that was in charge of these nations or these countries. These gods, despite what you may believe, are perhaps doing things that are going to achieve the result you want, or that are going to help you, but you may not like the outcome of getting what you want. And that could be this tangerine being in office. You may not like that. And perhaps some of the issues you have in your life that you have prayed for, that you have done spells for, that you have petitioned the gods for, are going to be accomplished, or perhaps can only be done by a certain outcome occurring. And this could in fact be the tangerine, unfortunately. However, we must also keep in mind that just because he is in office, he is also one that loves to, have the admiration of everyone. So, honestly, I believe that, if worst comes to worst, which will be addressed later on in the years to come, we will simply learn to adapt and be better. Witches or mages or magical practitioners have to be mature in spirit in every aspect of their life so that they don't get taken advantage of, and so that they are not led by their emotions, because people behave very irrationally when they are triggered, and they have every right to be, but you have to sort of learn how to mitigate that sort of thing. The same thing happens when you're in employment, in a job you don't like, or when you have to attend certain meetings that you don't like, or when you're in covens that perhaps get you what you need, but some of the members you might not like, or perhaps when you have to buy certain things that give you certain things, or buying things like medicine or drugs that will help you in one aspect, but they have their own drawbacks. There are exchanges that may or may not be equivalent, that we have to take into account for, that we have to be mindful of and demure. So I urge maturity, caution, and honestly, I'm not happy by what happened, but I had the foresight, and I was revealed the potential results of this through the dreams, through, I believe, Apollo, whoever. I was told who was going to win this election. I had the dream, I believe, a week or several days before it actually happened. And I was already preparing myself for what is to come, or for what could come. And that is why, for example, when I speak with Apollo, who is known as the god of prophecies, of foresight, I have a specific incantation that I use for him as well for myself. The incantation, or I believe the the song, whatever you want to call it, the poem goes as follows. Great God Apollo, whose eyes can see tomorrow, ready me for what's to come, so that my heart can bear the sorrow. But if it should come to pass that joy is held like polished brass, then graciously will I accept this boon of yours that has been kept. That's one phrase when it comes to that whole incantation that I do to Apollo. And it is one that I do to prepare myself for whatever is to come, whether I can see it or not. I do not ask for the gift of foresight or for prophecy. Foresight is simply thinking ahead of every possible outcome and then being prepared for it so that either you can mitigate some of the results or all of the results completely. You can either avoid it or, bear it whenever it comes. When you know something is going to happen, you can prepare for it a bit better. And so I was happy that I at least got that sort of thing. I was very hopeful in the first parts when it came to that election. But then I started to see a pattern and everything else. And, the amount of misinformation that is out there, because people are absolutely misinformed about everything, and how everything that people think is obvious isn't really. And they don't really do the research. And I have people that are within Christian circles that didn't vote for Trump at all. They thought he was appalling, that he doesn't represent the Christian values that they say the nation has, which doesn't really. These are the Christian values that they believe a Christian should have. And some people say he absolutely does, and I think that's absolutely stupid. When you compare to his rap sheet, as well as, his actions during the pandemic, during the riots, afterwards, and all of that sort of put together. But Joe by no means was a strong candidate either. He tried, did his best, but let's be honest, the man was practically dying when he was there. Both candidates are well into their 70s, if not 80 something or so. And so, even though they would deny that Donald Trump is experiencing certain things of dementia or aging, he's a very old candidate. I'm sort of appalled they didn't try to at least vote someone else in, that they all threw their checks in with Trump. And I believe it's because Trump is absolutely can be manipulated. Absolutely. He's one that strives for attention. He was in Hollywood for decades. He had his own TV show. However, that being said, for those of us who perhaps don't like the man, or perhaps his followers, and if you already burned these bridges, then don't worry about it. New ones can form. But for those of us who perhaps still have some things in their life, learn how to use them to your advantage. Magic is all about manipulating the energies that are apparent, that are around us. If you have someone that likes attention and that does things for that attention, then I suggest you do the same. Use your powers of influence to influence the people that are in charge, the people that you don't like, and you have to play to their egos. Learn how to use that. Learn how to manipulate that sort of energy for your benefit. If the economy improves, if our rights are not taken away, if things trudge along as normal, then you're fine. If they don't, prepare for that and learn how to arm yourself accordingly and appropriately as well. And when it comes to sort of things happening in the future, I suggest we sort of get to learn the laws and the rights that we have and to hold people accountable even if they do not, But keep living your life. Keep working. Keep saving money. Keep making strong and smart decisions. And maintain the connections you have with people that you align with morally strong. Learn how to build communities, maintain communities. And to that point, I also want to give a huge shout out and a huge congratulations for Cat and Cauldron for opening up their temple of Hecate Apotropeia. This was a new thing that opened, and they are essentially ratifying it, making it legal. It's going to be a protected religion. It has to be under Wicca because it is a protected religion. But I thought this was a brilliant move. And honestly, more people should sort of do this, I want to congratulate Austin and Mike and the rest of the Coven members of Cat and Cauldron. I love you all. I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy that we have this. I am still working on my own self, my own beliefs in that. I'm just sort of get into it. And when I can, I am sort of warming up to her in a way. Perhaps I might be in Utah and attend one of these special sermons or whatever you guys do, these rituals, and I am absolutely looking forward to it. But I sort of want to encourage all of you to sort of be mindful of yourselves, of your surroundings, of who you are speaking with. Do not burn a bridge that you can use, okay? Bear whatever pain you can and you must for a time until you don't need it anymore. Then by all means, burn that bridge. But be very careful when it comes to sort of things. These are, in fact, spirits. Their ancestors are tied to certain things. They have connections as well that you can use for your benefit. So be mindful of this. And I have no issues or qualms. If you're a person of morals and principles, that is absolutely fine. But be mindful that perhaps your principles, despite having them, may not be paying your bills or putting food on your table. We all have to do what we must to survive. That's all I can ask of anyone. But I urge all of us to be mindful, and to, be smart, collect your information, learn how to sort of not bottle up your emotions, but siphon them to where they can be useful. And if you need a moment, take it. And then help others, embrace others, and fight for their rights because they're absolutely vital and they absolutely matter. Okay? I love all of you. I care for all of you deeply. I encourage all of you to sort of keep up on your studies, read those books, watch the YouTubers that are in your circle, see where they sort of align with on a political spectrum, see how they sort of see their sort of outcomes of the election or their outcomes of their lives or anything else. Make sure that you are, building connections that, strengthen your energy, that strengthen your life, your purpose if you believe you have one, that can aid your life in many aspects, whether it's financial, whether it's sexual, whether it's emotional, whether it's communal, whether it's things like food or just sustaining yourself. Learn how to maintain those connections. Give yourself the space if you need it, but just be mindful. Think about bridges as doors and pathways. If you close a door, that is one less path you can take that can get you to where you need to go. Okay? Just be mindful. That's all I'm asking for. But I encourage all of you to sort of be out there, donate to the causes you believe in. I donated to the elections, I donated to the campaign. It didn't go my way, but like I said, I put my money out there. If you have local businesses, support them, especially the ones that, believe in your rights and fight for your rights. These are absolutely people that matter because they have connections, they have influence, they have money, all of these things that matter. Support them because they support you. That is how you create a community, and that is how you strengthen your community and your society at large. Okay? Keep up on your studies. Practice safety, whether it's sex or magic. Let your brother out of his cage once in a while, or your sister if they're misbehaving. It can get rather gassy in there. And, learn to treat people with some respect, dignity, or perhaps with some deference if you have that as well. Thanksgiving is absolutely coming up. It is this week. There may be a lot of that at the table. If your parents or family members do not appreciate or cannot keep political or religious shit out of their mouths, out of their table, have no respect for you, find someone else to go to. They have to be mindful of that as well. You can attend them for the time being, and as soon as they bring anything up or you feel as though it is taking a turn for the worst, absolutely leave, but make plans for that. I already have plans in mind, okay? My family can be wild cards, though they all align against my political views and spiritual views. We absolutely had a Thanksgiving or two that was ruined by religion or politics. So this is something that they may or may not bring up because they have nothing else to talk about because they are losers when it comes to this. They watch nothing but political and religious shit. So the odds of that going to shit can be rather high. But if you know people that have Thanksgivings, that they align with you politically and or religiously, that they love you as a person, they care for you, you feel safe there, and they're having things there, make plans now and make sure to go over there and have a good time, to share that time and give thanks to your ancestors, to the spirits that help bring you into this life, that help bring you into the society you live in, and that help you strengthen your resolve and your beliefs within whatever structure you have, okay? This is a time to be thankful, to be loving, to be gracious, but be gracious to the people in your lives that impacted your lives in a way that gave you a great outlook, a more wide outlook, and that essentially gave you good things in life, a house, perhaps, in that aspect. If that's all they gave you, thank them for that, and that's it. That it gave you your mind, your soul, your love, your compassion, the brilliant and beautiful things about you, your skills or whatever. But also thank the people before them, your predecessors, their predecessors. And for the people in your life or perhaps in your world that made it a little bit easier for you to live in. I thank you all dearly. I love you all dearly. And until next time, everyone, stay tuned, be well, be thankful, and be safe. Goodbye.